Tibor, the guy who does the Tibor reel. I forget his name.
Jurassic, Ted.
Yeah, Ted Jurassic. And I was giving him a hard time about the tiny little handles on those Tibor reels at the time. And I said, Islander, which is not nearly as good a reel as you guys, has the option to have a big handle. And, I'm here I am with an Albie trying to pinch it in, with my fingers. And like a year or so later, they came out with oversized handles. So maybe my drunken tirade worked on the guy.
And he didn't send you a reel as a thank you?
No, they do take care of you. You can service your reels. They're not the easiest reels to, service yourself. Even taking one apart, it's kind of a pain with the springs and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
I bought a bunch of those E-tans, or 3-tan, I think they're called. And the issue with them is you're making all these long casts, and all of a sudden you realize your line's getting shorter and shorter because they spin up on the line. And a number of reels do that. And you have to kind of be aware of what's going on.
The only Tibor I have are my 12 weights.
Yeah, I've got a big one for that too. It looks like we're going to go down on May 11th and 12th. Ken and I, we got a guy that fishes at night by the bridges, and they swing big flies for tarpon. And apparently they do pretty well at it. I guess they anchor up and then they get in front of the bridge and they swing. And this guy, Jake Jordan, that I had met in Alaska, was actually open because he had some COVID deaths this year, which was sad, of his clients. And then he filled up and he put us onto one of his co-guides, And so we're going to try that. So hopefully we'll get a picture of one of them big girls or something in a couple of weeks. That's on my birthday trip.
Happy early birthday.
I think Brian does some of that same type of swinging the big, heavy-weighted flies.
Who's this?
Brian Bain.
Oh yeah, right where we were today in Punta Gorda. There goes your dubbing again. We fished at night. He would use his trolling motor, and Jim Cannon and I went, and who I'm going to actually write now, and we swung flies, and of course the guy I take with me always catches a fish, and I might get a bite. I was telling Brian about it's kind of cheating, but I said that I've caught quite a few tarpon on the really big gummy flies that they sell. So I threw some out, and of course I got a bunch of hits right away. I couldn't stick any of them. It's a little awkward fly. It's not really meant for I don't know, maybe it's not meant for hooking tarpon or whatever. But when I went to Los Roques, Venezuela on my 50th, they have these pancake flats there. They're in the middle of deep water. There's these small, acre or two flats. And on one side there were tarpon busting into bait school that had sat there. And me and the guy I was with stood there and stood on the pancake and fished, into 6-8 foot of water in this busting bait. And I got about a 90-pounder that I fought from the land because I was on the pancake. And I got him up onto finally got him up onto the pancake, and we got a picture of him with the line across his back, and he popped off at that point. But, seems to be the story of my life. I had a guy pop one off of the hand gaff one time down in Costa Rica. Clink! Oh, sorry. Oh, so sorry, sir. So.
Well, what were you going to do with it anyway?
Take a picture or something. I worked all week for that one fish in 25 to 40 feet of water with super heavy sinking lines and big, heavy sinking shrimp flies. So it was.
When all you had to do was go a few miles south to the worm hatch.
This was in Rio Parismina, it was called. It was interesting because they had a fleet of boats. I think they buy one well craft and then they copy them. And the guides have to go out through the inlet of the river that's there, the Rio, and jump the waves to get out. And the captain, the main guy who runs the place, I called him Ricky Ricardo. He's very dapper. It would have like a chase boat in case one of the boats got overturned because of the bull sharks all in there. So the first day, my guy couldn't get out for like 3 chances. He kept circling around. I'm going, oh, this is going to be a rough week. And the other interesting point on that trip is that they radioed each other. There was a giant school of tarpon and about, I don't know, 30, 40 feet of water on the surface. So all the guides pulled out these big homemade paddles out of palm fronds. And they sat in the front of their wellcraft things and they paddled to the fish silently. And I thought that was like a little and they're all coming up at once. And I thought that was really cool.
So you said there's the red tide bed in Charlotte Harbor. Have you been anywhere else the past couple of days? Seen it?
No, I've heard of places, and I think Bob sent around a map. There's Martinsky, my brother. Look at that. It looks cold in Montana. And there's been reports, and who knows with this Piney Point horrible nutrient spill, what's going to happen in the upcoming weeks and months when things heat up. So, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Peter Van Buren's on here. He's got a place up there close. Peter, can you tell us anything about what's going on up there if you've seen anything? I don't know if you can get on or not.
Maybe
anybody else up on South Tampa Bay noticing anything?
Not yet. I haven't been up there.
So I was on the bay Sunday. You could smell it, but there weren't any dead fish around or anything. So I think it was just coming across.
Hey, Ethan, it's Peter.
Yeah, Peter. You notice anything up there on your side of the bay?
I haven't been out the last couple of weeks. I just started a new job down at Longboat. But I'm right on the water at Longboat. I haven't noticed anything there. I fished a couple weeks ago out at what's that point? Just south of Bishop Harbor, where we went fishing that one day.
Yeah.
Emerson Point. I went and fished Emerson Point. Didn't notice anything there a couple weeks ago. It was pretty clean. The bait fish were pretty sparse, but the charter boats are doing pretty well with their live bait. But on the fly, I didn't catch anything outside of one jack on the fly. Okay. But I haven't noticed anything there yet.
Ken, did you get out today? Did you go to the harbor?
Yeah, I was actually with JT and I went out on Peace River and upriver, no problem. But as we came down, I was going to show JT a spot that I've fished before with some success on some spotted sea trout. And as soon as we got down below the 41 bridge, even before actually we started coughing, and I said, something's up. And I was, drinking water, thinking, oh, maybe I just had a little catch in my throat or whatever. But as soon as we got down by the bridge, it was real obvious. There was dead fish right below 41 bridge, good number of them. A lot of birds rafting, obviously trying to eat the dead fish, I'm guessing. So we boogied out of Dodge. We got out of there pretty quick. So that's it for the day.
Yeah, it was an immediate hacking, coughing, horribleness.
Yeah.
You couldn't have stuck around. It was nasty.
No. I mean, it's not the worst I've ever been in, but definitely it was, it wasn't pleasant. It wasn't a place I wanted to stay very long.
And granted, the water wasn't tinted red. It didn't look like anything was amiss other than the dead fish that, you could see visibly.
Yeah.
Anybody else been out?
I was talking to some of the dock hands down in Angel Creek, And I asked about Lemon Bay, and they said there's been no issue in Lemon Bay. And even at Stump Pass, they said there's, if the wind is coming off, if it's an onshore wind coming from the west, you might smell some of the red tide, but they said there hasn't been really an evidence of dead fish or anything like that yet. So I
was on Lemon Bay this morning, and it was fine. I was behind Blind Pass Beach, and it was fine. Fishing was slow because I got a late start, but it was fine. The only thing bad was across the bay at Lemon Bay Park, there was a fire. I don't know what happened there, but it was a pretty big fire. You know, where the nature trails are.
I actually was out yesterday. I go to Ted Sperling Park on South Lido, and there's a little sandbar out there, and every other cast would be a ladyfish. The other cast would be a sea trout. I mean, they were extremely, extremely active. So right at sunset last night, I got 4 sea trout and like in between like 3 different ladies, and then 2 snook, all in 45 minutes. It was the best day of fishing I've had in probably 2 years. So I don't know if it was a fluke or not, but still doing pretty well over there.
Yeah, that's Lynn's spot, isn't it?
Is that Len's spot?
Yeah, I think he fishes down that area a lot.
I don't know why more like people don't show up down in that area, especially first thing in the morning and sunset. That's just, man, I mean, you don't have to have a boat. You don't have to even have a kayak or anything. You just walk out there,
Yeah, you'll see the guides pulling up there in the channel just south off of that. Well, anyone else? Ken, you got anything for us this evening?
Well, I noticed we had 23 participants when I was just checking. I don't know if that's added on in the last couple of seconds or two. I just want to mention a couple of things. That one is we had a hell of a good time on Saturday. For those that may not have made it, unfortunately, it was great food, great company. It was the Fish When You Can picnic awards celebration. And again, I'd like to thank Ethan especially for all his hard work with setting up the Fish When You Can, monitoring it, setting up our picnic area and all that good stuff. So again, Ethan, thank you. And Al, and I believe his neighbor's name is Paul.
Pete,
correct?
Pete Prisley.
Pete, okay. For their cooking, the pulled pork was excellent, and it was a great time. The other thing I want to mention is we talked about at that get together, the board at our last board meeting tossed around some ideas on startup as far as in-person meetings. We're looking at strongly looking at July, the month of July, as our first in-person meeting post-COVID. If we do, there's a couple of things. One is we discussed, and we're probably going to follow through on this, to say you have to mask to come to the meeting. We opened it up to the general group at our Fish When You Can get together, and almost everybody thought that was very important. We would strongly recommend that everybody has their vaccinations before you come to a meeting, but I don't know if we can mandate that, so to speak, because some people may just feel it's not right for them. So these are the things that we're looking to do. So hopefully that's going to happen for us in July. I'll be making contact with the garden club and making sure we can get on the docket there for our normal dates, and hopefully go from there. And thirdly, I would like to thank Mitch for agreeing to be our presenter tonight. Mitch, we've heard great things about you from is it JT, your cousin?
He is.
Yeah, we're
You would-
long
you
lost
would-
cousins that we found out last year or so through his dad. Had seen it there. He's Tinney and we're Tinsky. And I don't know the whole story of the Tinney versus Tinsky thing. I'm sure Mitch does. But his father, Stu, is a top 100 fly fisherman in the world, and has a really cool book with fishing stories about his life. And he's like 84, 85 years old and still fishes.
Wow, excellent.
He's 87, fishes 7 days.
87.
87.
We'll give Chubb a run for his money.
There you go. There you go. So Mitch, thank you. And I'm surprised that you acknowledge the fact that JT is your cousin. Most people in our club don't acknowledge him as being connected with us.
Okay, well, I need to share a caveat with you. He's only been my cousin for a year.
Oh, then you're okay. See, that's pretty good.
Next year I might not claim him, but I'll always claim Mark.
All right, there you go.
Mark will be left
many
as
of-
soon, so I don't know.
Many of us refer to him as Sparky, and maybe you can kind of figure that one out.
He's family. I'm going to leave it alone. There's some
All
things I
right.
want to say. It would bring his wife into the game. We've got to ask her some questions.
Uh-huh. Well, she's a sweetheart, so he married well.
We tend to marry up in our family.
There you go. There you go. And JT, after all that, I'll stop busting your horns here. All right.
The horns are showing?
He left the meeting.
All right. So Ethan, I'll turn it back over to you, buddy.
Thanks, Ken. So yeah, like Ken said, Mitch Tinney's going to be our presenter this evening. Mitch has caught fish on 4 different continents. He specializes though in these striped bass and hybrid striped bass. He's based out of Middle Tennessee from my old stomping grounds. So I'm really excited about that. I was speaking with Mitch a little bit earlier, and some of the places I'd fish as a kid are some of the places where he guides, and it's amazing to me that we never crossed paths. But tonight we have, and this is going to be a great presentation. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Mitch. So, Mitch, you've been guiding for what, 30 years, you say?
Well, more than that. I started guiding when I was 13. My dad started the first guide service on Percy Priest Lake when they first built that lake. Dad was a commercial striped bass fisherman on the East Coast out of New Jersey. And when the moratorium came in that all commercial harvest of striped bass had to cease for a decade, we were in trouble. And my mother's side of the family is from the Nashville area. So we packed up and moved here without a whole lot of hope and a whole lot of prayers. They just happened to build a lake the year before we moved here, and they stocked it with this funny looking little fish called a striped bass. And there was not a redneck south of the Mason-Dixon line that had ever even heard of a striped bass. So we kind of had an automatic end. It took about 4 years for the fish to get big enough for people to want to pay to catch them. But after the 4th year, Dad started a guide service, and things took off. By the time I was 13, Dad had added a second boat, and I was guiding in the summers and on weekends. And short of a 4-year hiatus to go to college, so my mother could be appeased. If I was going to be a fishing guide, at least I could be an educated fishing guide. I've been guiding for many decades. Total probably 40 years now. I'm going to be 57 this year, and but I'd say full time almost 40.
So is the striped bass your favorite fish to target, or do you have a
No, the tarpon is the fish that is tattooed on my forearm. So no, my favorite fish in the world to chase on a fly is definitely a tarpon. Unlike Jay, I'm still young enough and foolish enough to like to chase the bigger tarpon. So I spend a disproportionate amount of my tarpon time down in the Keys, Bahia Honda area. I try and catch the worm hatch every year and get my heart broken at least a dozen times a day. So yeah, that would be my favorite fish. But I've got a lot of favorite fish. The striper is my blood fish. I mean, we've got generations of my family have lived for this fish. The striped bass is a story fish.
Mm-hmm.
most people don't realize just how storied it is. The very first taxation in this land that was levied by the British was a taxation on striped bass. The very first university built in this land, still under British rule, was built on the dollars generated from the striped bass tax. So this fish was instrumental in the birth of this nation. We go back as far as the first Thanksgiving. They were eating more striped bass than they were turkeys, gentlemen. American population were much more adept at catching striped bass than they were at shooting turkeys with a bow and arrow and a stick. They were tremendous net builders and trap builders. And back in those days, you could walk across the stripers on the Chesapeake when they were in their spawning season and literally just grab them or spear them. So that fish, the first early settlers were taught how to take a young striped bass that they taught the settlers how to catch and to put them in a hole in the ground, and over the top of that hole to plant a seed. And that's how we learned about how to fertilize the ground here that wasn't as fertile as that European soil they were used to farming. And those first early settlers in large part survived because of that striped bass. So it's an important fish to our nation's history, and certainly an important fish to my family's history. We were able to come to Tennessee and find a way to make a living. And Dad and I both kind of found a name for ourselves with this fish. I've published more articles about the inland striped bass than any human being on the planet. I've guided a lot. I've spent a lot of time underwater studying these fish with a naval seal rebreather. So I'm not kicking out a lot of bubbles and I don't spook them. So I can really see what their behaviors are like without me being an external stimuli to alter that behavior. And I've learned a tremendous amount by being underwater with these fish. And they're just an awesome fish. In freshwater, we don't have saltwater fish. We have freshwater fish. This fish that is in my lake, 1,000 miles from the ocean, is the same fish that swims in the ocean. It is not a different species. It is a Marone saxatilis. Now, we have a hybridized species, and you'll see some pictures of those fish later that are a cross between the white bass, also known as a sand bass, and the pure strain striped bass. And that has created what is known as a Cherokee bass or a hybridized bass. They call them sunshine bass out west. They don't get as large. A monster hybrid is maybe 23, 24, 25 pounds. But we catch striped bass here in Tennessee almost every bit as large as they're catching in the Atlantic Ocean. We're catching 65, 66, 67 pound stripers here in Tennessee. That's a testament to their ability to adapt, and they have adapted to so many different reservoirs around this country. Initially, not to create a resource for people to enjoy as a sport, but more to save lakes. Now, I'll give you a brief understanding of why we have them here, and that'll kind of help you understand what their kind of symbiotic relationship is in the middle America and why in the heck we have these big old fish in the middle of the country. When TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, started building these man-made lakes around the country, a problem developed. The algae development in these lakes, in these warm weather environments, was astronomical. And the indigenous fish populations could not keep up with the overproduction of the primary bait fishes here, threadfin shad, gizzard shad, skipjack herring. These bait fishes were overpopulating so much that they were consuming all of the materials that they needed to survive. So within a matter of years, the bait fish populations were crashing because they were so overpopulated that they were depleting their forage base. And then the native species were crashing because they had nothing to eat. Some bright chemist came up with some equation of, what if we take this crazy fish that we've discovered can survive in fresh water? And that was an interesting thing. Let's back up for just a second. How did we even know they'd live in fresh water? We know that they spawn in fresh water. They always have. They go up into a freshwater environment like a salmon does. Unlike a salmon, they don't die after they spawn. They go right back out into the ocean. But like a salmon, they go to the same spot every year to have their babies. One of the places that they had babies was in the Santee Cooper River in South Carolina. And when they decided to build a dam across the Santee Cooper River and create a lake, they knew that they were doing so in the spring and were effectively trapping a bunch of striped bass up there. They just figured that they would all die and it would be a wash and they would move on with their production of their lake. Unfortunately, nobody told the stripers. The stripers survived in the same sea year round and had no problem living a lifetime in fresh water. And in addition to that, they no longer had sharks chasing them. So they were the big predator, and they did very, very well. Advance forward to TVA building on these lakes that are now dying all across the country. The guys, you know, every redneck that's ever seen Bill dance wants to catch a largemouth bass that's 9 pounds, and they're all dying in their lakes. So they're screaming, help, help. What can we do? A brilliant chemist came up with an equation of, hey, what if we take this big old striper, which cannot reproduce in 99% of these freshwater environments because they don't have the sandy bottoms that is, you know, known from an estuary up into a river that feeds into the ocean. They just not conducive for natural reproduction. So we can control the numbers of how many of these fish we put in an environment. So they came up with a number of how many per acre it would take to control these overburdening shad populations, and it worked. So the initial introduction of the striped bass in these lakes around the country was to help control shad populations, so the bass fishermen could continue catching their bass, and the walleye guys and the perch guys and all those guys. There was horrible concerns that the stripers were eating all of their game fish. Tons of studies were done. 97% of a striper's diet is whatever the indigenous bait fish is where it lives, whether it's alewives or skipjack or shad or whatever. It's not eating your bass. I will say they do like the taste of trout. Very much like the taste of trout, and not spotted sea trout, although I bet they would eat one in a heartbeat, but like a rainbow and a brown trout, they lick their lips for them. So that's how we got them here. And then it was just a matter of us figuring out what kind of changes this fish made when it left the ocean and ended up finding itself in a freshwater environment. And what we discovered is that there were very few changes other than they couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't migrate up and down the coast. For those of you that are familiar with the striped bass, it is a migratory species. In the winter, it wants to be down south. And in the summer, up until the fall, it wants to be up and down, but more up north. That's why you have Montauk in the fall is the mecca for us guys that chase stripers. We all want to be up there in, you know, October, maybe November. It's up to global warming or whatever you want to call it. But that is their migratory pattern. They're going to go all the way from northern Florida all the way up to Nova Scotia and back down. But aside from that kind of migration, and we do have a migration in our lakes where they do tend to want to come to one portion of the lake at one time of the year and migrate up lake another time of the year. So they follow a similar pattern. And for all intents and purposes, they do the same things. They eat fish the same way. They are a schooling fish. They are capable of working in concert if you guys have seen all the videos of sailfish and how they'll hold a bait ball. I've been underwater and I've watched 3,000 stripers hold a bait ball the size of a football field and turns going in and feeding on it. And they work very efficiently. Sometimes they're going to drive that bait to the surface and eat on top. Sometimes they're going to eat at a stratified depth. But one of the problems that we run into in these inland lakes in certain times of the year is a depletion of oxygen. So that band of water known as the thermocline, where you have maximum oxygen up to that point where you hit that thermocline and nothing below it. Those fish are going to stop at that thermocline. And in the summer months, they will rarely be below it. They'll travel down into those deeper waters to cool their body core temperature, but they're rarely feeding. They tend to feed up in that column a little higher. In most bodies of water, you're going to find most of your striped bass feeding, bless you, Jay, you're going to find most of your striped bass feeding between 28 feet deep and the surface. The further out west you go, when you start getting into canyon lakes like Mead, like Powell, lakes like that, it's not uncommon to catch these fish at 110, 120, 130 feet down before they lost 100 feet of water in those lakes. So that's kind of what this fish does. In the early spring of the year, we tend to use top water type stuff for them, and that can be as simple as a small crease fly. In the spring, they tend to be eating shallower baits. So this little crease fly, I like to tie rattles in my crease flies. I think that at times that sound will allow them to find it a little better, especially if the water's a little turbid or if I have a little chop on the water. Anything more than a little bit of a chop, I'm going to probably shift over to a popper. And if the water is really slick, I tied this dog walking fly that's got a foam curved head, and it's similar to like a Zara spook in how it walks the dog in the water. And they really crush that. Color schemes, we try and stay in your standard white bait kind of color schemes: white body, black back, gray back, blue back, chartreuse back, olive drab back, kind of maintaining that same kind of pilchard color scheme to relate to what you guys are used to seeing down there. But they also like to eat bluegills. And there's a time of year that we are throwing flies that, once we get past that spring shad focus, they will key over to bluegills, and we'll start throwing flies that look a little bit more like a sunfish or a bluegill. As we get deeper into the latter part of spring, our fish really start targeting big baits, and we're throwing stuff more like this, larger shad patterns this is probably a 10-inch pattern. That's probably an 11-inch pattern. And we move all the way up to a 14-inch pattern.
Wow.
Which is not easy when you have wrists the size of a girl. But I have learned to compensate for my girl wrists and sling a 10 weight with a great big monster fly on. We do throw a lot of articulating flies, whether it's the game changers you guys may have seen. And as I said, there are places where we're catching them on trout. So I tie a brown trout fly, I tie a rainbow trout fly, something that's going to try and replicate the bait fish that we see. And I even tie stuff with those dragon tails. I'm sure you guys have seen the dragon tails. And that gives a really interesting movement to your flies. But all of it started from conventional tackle fishing. When I first started guiding, there wasn't a living soul I could talk into chasing these fish on a fly rod. It just wasn't. There were very few guys doing it. Yeah, I mean, the East Coast guys were doing it. The Saltwater Fly Rodders Club that my dad was instrumental in beginning with, Lefty and all those guys. They were doing it, but trying to get that in Tennessee was hard. The few guys that fly fish were chasing trout, and the whole concept of trying to chase these fish on a fly rod evolved over a long, long period of time. One, we didn't have flies. We didn't know how to tie flies for these fish, and it was just all experimental. So we just started experimenting. And Dad was pretty hardcore on the gear. I was pretty hardcore on the fly. And between the two of us, we adapted our conventional tackle fishing to fly fishing. We started making flies that looked as much like the lures that we were throwing, as we possibly could. That's the cotton cordell redfin, probably one of the most famous lures that was ever made for striped bass fishing. It's been used all up and down the East Coast for so many years. Most people probably don't realize that Cotton Cordell spent a month at our house figuring this thing out in Middle Tennessee and practicing with it on the lake I guide on until he got it fine-tuned. And then he took it and had it manufactured. But we throw pencil poppers, just like you would throw in the surf up on the shore. And we learned to tie poppers. Back then we couldn't even find foam. We were robbing champagne corks and, sanding them down with sandpaper and, whatever we could find. There was no flashy material. We were stealing Christmas tree tinsel and, anything that we could find. We'd find hey, it was what we had to do. We found this terrible, terrible hotel that had this horrible orange carpet. And we discovered that if we pulled up some of that carpet and we used that as this orange dubbing at the throat, that we caught more fish. So we, once a year, we'd all rent this terrible hotel room and we'd go in there with razor blades and we'd shave the dubbing. and it smelled to high heaven in there. It was like, one of those places you rent by the hour and you got 9 guys in there with razor blades scraping orange carpet for dubbing. We were a dedicated lot, and finally materials became available, and we got, they made these great Renzetti vices to tie on, and life got easier. And then computers came out and people could connect and talk and share ideas. And that is when things really blew up in the world of fly fishing for striped bass, when people across the globe could really start chatting. Because there's a tremendous West Coast striper fishery. Most people don't realize this, but the striped bass was never in the Pacific Ocean. That was not where it grew up. It grew up in the Atlantic Ocean. And a guy moved out to the West Coast and missed striped bass. Happened to be a guy that had a buttload of money and decided that he was going to hire a train and fill a bunch of water barrels full of fry from the Chesapeake. And he was going to hire a bunch of Chinese folks to take their arms and aerate these barrels from the East Coast to the West Coast. 5 days, they got there, 110 fingerling striped bass, and dumped them in the San Francisco Bay.
Huh.
And now that whole, Pacific Coast resource is booming as a result of those 110 fry that guy took out.
Was that guy's name Dan Blanchard?
I don't know.
It's a joke. He's a guy. Hey, Mitch, can you center yourself a little? I'm having trouble getting a picture and getting you actually in it. Do me a favor. Smile and hold up a fly real quick at the same time. Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry for the interruption.
Absolutely. So to kind of give you our springtime rundown, we're going to go out crack of dawn. We're going to be out on the water just before daylight. We're going to be targeting fish that are going to be coming up on the surface. We'll start blind casting until we start seeing some fish blow. And then we'll start targeting fish as we see them if we can. A disproportionate number of those fish we will catch blind casting. And that's fine. All floating line stuff early in the season. We're not going to start dropping down until the latter part of the spring. Once spring rolls around, we're going to start using some intermediate lines, dropping down anywhere from 5 feet below the surface down to about 12 feet. Anything below 10 or 12 feet, it's just not efficient to use an intermediate line. We need some heads and we need to get down fast. We're going to use some depth charge when we want to get down. Heavy grain stuff to get down 15, 18, 20, 22 feet deep because we want to keep that fly down in that zone as long as we can. And we do a lot of dump casts because this fish will follow a fly for a long time. In other words, we might have 40, 50, 60 feet of backing laying in our stripping basket or on the deck of the boat. And we're going to throw as close to a 90-foot cast as we can get. And then we're just going to start shaking a line out of that rod tip in hopes that fly will drop as straight down as possible instead of penduluming towards you 20 feet and you losing 20 feet of your strip cast in the zone. So you're going to be doing that. We also, when those fish go deep, we'll do a lot of the West Coast salmon techniques where we'll actually use heavy-headed flies. Actually, that fly box is at the lake in my locker. They make fish skulls. I'm sure you're familiar with the fish skulls. Okay, we'll use those fish skulls and literally just dump a fly straight down 30 feet and just quick strip straight up through just absolutely as vertically as you can, straight through a pool of fish. Ethan's going to show a slide in a minute of an image of my depth finder with fish in it, and you'll see how thick some of these fish schools can get, and that'll give you an idea of why you can strip a fly straight from the bottom up and stick these fish, because they will mass in school in such great numbers, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands, sometimes tens of thousands.
Wow.
Now, we use birds a lot like you guys do. We have different birds that we use at different times of the year. In the wintertime, we're using your seagulls. Our seagulls are actually coming over from North Carolina. They come every year in about October and leave about March every year. And we can utilize those birds to find the shad schools all winter long. So that aids us. However, backing up to our start in the spring, the birds that we're looking for are the herons. We'll have a few terns on the lake and we pay attention to them. But the great blue herons and the black crowned or black crested night herons are the birds that we really pay most attention to. Those birds at that time of year will sit in our trees, elevated. Normally, when you see a wading bird, and a great blue heron or a black crowned night heron are both wading birds, when you see them elevated in trees, they're looking for bait that's being driven up by fish. And that's what we're targeting. We're looking for those fish that are being pushed up into a shallower depth zone for us to be able to target. Typically, those fish are coming all the way to the surface. They'll crack a shad this size. A 6, 7, 8, 9 inch shad is what that fish has done. That fish that 30, 40 pound striper has gone down to 25, 26 feet. He's separated 6 or 8 of these big gizzard shad, and he starts driving them to the surface. Right at the surface, that big striper does a big 180 right through this fish. He's not even trying to grab one. He just does a 180 to stun one of them enough that he can grab them. The dynamic that we watch is as soon as that fish turns those bait and starts coming to the surface, those birds that are 70 feet high in the tree, 50 feet high in the tree, can see through the water and see him pushing those fish up. He immediately takes off for the tree. So we're not looking for fish. We're actually tracking the bird as he leaves the tree. We see his trajectory. We look forward of where the bird is looking to, and usually we can see the fish starting to blow up on that bait. Oftentimes the bird will get to it before we can get a fly to it or a lure to it, as the case may be. But quite often we can get between that bird and that fish and take that fish off of that bait. Other techniques that we use on top in the spring is a bait and switch, where I'll actually take a spinning rod with a hookless topwater bait for my clients that just don't have quite as much range and get those fish a little closer to them. And again, we've had these fish hit so many times. We had Bill Dance had a fish blow up on his lure probably 14 times in one cast. They miss a lot. They come in so hot. Fish can swim 30 miles an hour in a lake where nothing can swim faster than 9. So they tend to come in a little hot, and they do miss. But as long as you don't ever set the hook on a striper, if you don't feel him, you're good. Odds are you're going to get another shot at him as long as you don't zone. The key is like with any other fish, especially a visual take. Don't set the hook just because you see a fish blow up. Wait until you actually feel him before you strip set that hook. And yes, we strip set stripers. This is not a little rainbow trout in your little creek that you're going to lift set. You've got to put the heat to these fish. Once we get into later spring, as I said, we're using our intermediate lines. We're targeting those fish down 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 feet deep. Those fish are going to be actually in really deep water. They're typically sitting in the channel. Watch those fish at daylight, just as daylight's cracking, sitting in 90 feet of water, 100 feet of water on the bottom. And on my electronics, I slowly, over the course of 30 minutes, watch them elevate to that 15, 12-foot depth zone, and then we are targeting that depth zone. My favorite time of year is actually summertime, and that's when we're exclusively night fishing. I love to fish at night, whether it's conventionally or the fly. I just love that sensation of being in that kind of darkness. I'm so much more connected to my fly or lure in the water when I don't have all of the other sensory things going on around me that daylight opens up. When I get in tunnel vision when it's dark out and I'm fishing, I can be so focused on this one piece of water right in front of me where my fly is that I feel more connected to it. And I feel like I'm more effective as an angler at night. Others are more effective in the daylight. I'm just a night guy. And in the summer, these fish go nocturnal. It's just like a big brown trout. You can catch, 20-inch brown trout all day long. But if you want to catch a 30-inch brown trout or a 35-inch brown trout in my water, you're going to fish at night because that's when the predators come out to play. Once we move into fall and we're no longer fishing those summertime dark nights where we're kind of really fishing the bottom 17, 18, 19 feet down, those fish are pinning baits on the bottom. And we're using shooting heads, 400, 450, 500, 550 grains to get us down to those depths. And then it's like any other fishing, guys. It's figuring out your presentation. Knowing what it is they're eating is key, and size. These fish can be very size selective. If they're eating a shad that is 3 inches long and you're throwing a 7-inch shad pattern at them, odds are they are not going to take it. Now, if you're ever err on the side of caution, err on the side of going too small than too large, and here's why. I've discovered that there are times when they get fixated on big baits, but even when they rarely refuse little ones if it's presented right in front of them. But when they are fixated on little baits, they'll almost never take a big bait. So wherever you striper fish, always have several different size patterns of the same pattern in your box, because It might not be the fly. The problem might not be the fly. It's probably the size of the fly that you're throwing, and it's just not commensurate to what they're seeing. And anything suspect, this fish has run from sharks for 1,000,000 years. It is a frightened, scared fish. It might be the big bully in the lake. It doesn't know that yet. It still thinks sharks are chasing it genetically. Just so it's a flighty fish. I tell my clients, no talking in the boat. No talking. We can whisper all you want, but no talking in the boat. If the season permits, I ask my clients to take their shoes off in my boat. I don't care if you got toe jam, no toes, black toe, stinky toe. Please take your shoes off. We're going to catch more fish. The quieter we can be, the less shadow we can throw, the better off we are. Because again, it's a flighty fish. So we approach it as much like a hunting trip as we do a fishing trip as far as our stealth is concerned. When I shut my boat down, I shut my boat down 100 yards away from where I think we're going to catch fish. And I'm going to use my trolling motor to ease up on where we're going to spend that first bit of morning fishing or evening fishing. I don't want to blow these fish out. There are times when these fish will blow themselves out because you're pounding them too hard. So it's great to learn patience. Catch a couple fish, back off the school. Let them calm down for 10 minutes. Ease back up on that school. Bang a couple more fish, back off the school. Let them regroup. Let them get calm. Let them get back on that bait and ease back into those fish. Catch 2 or 3, 4 more, and then back off. Doing so will allow you to keep a school together all day and catch fish all day, as opposed to running in there catching 5 real fast, bang, 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 and then blowing the whole school out. And I've noticed that applies to a lot of my saltwater fishing too. When you get on a good bunch of fish, it's very easy to put them down by getting greedy and not being patient. I'm sure some of you have had that same experience where you guys are fishing.
Yeah, snook lights are an example of that.
Yeah.
Snook lights at night.
Yes. Any light circle at night for any species is going to be that way. We have stripers that come into light circles. Same thing as a snook. You catch 5 of them in a row, time to find another light.
Exactly.
But catch one, back out, catch another one, back out, catch another one, back out. You could theoretically keep those snook in that light all night. Same with the stripers. So then we push off into winter. I hate winter. I really wish I was tarpon fishing all winter long with you guys and not up here, because even though we might be called south, it's cold as hell up here in January. And of course, my fish are 30 miles away from the marina where I keep my boat in the winter, because as I told you guys earlier, these fish do offer themselves to a migratory pattern. And in the winter, they want to be all the way up my headwaters. And that requires a 30-mile run, and it's a cold run. However, when we do get up there, we find screaming seagulls. It looks like Montauk. It looks like Cape Cod. It looks like any of the, ocean type environments that where you'd see birds crashing on the water, fish blowing up everywhere, and a bunch of crazy guys that are willing to fish in the winter, all running around chasing crashing fish and birds. But that is the resource that we have here. We have a couple of different types of resources. We have both a riverine environment and these lake environments. The rivers tend to produce the biggest fish. And it seems, again, you got to remember that we've only been studying an inland striped bass since 1941. That's when the St. Cooper's first fish got trapped, 1941. So in the greater scheme of things, we don't have a tremendous amount of data on these fish. So we're still learning a lot, and we still got a lot more to learn. But I know you have a lot of them down in your neck of the woods in the northern part. Now, I wouldn't say a lot, but you have them in the northern parts of your state. I don't know if any of you guys have chased them or not. Anybody here caught them up north?
Well, no, we got some Maine guys.
North.
No, I was
Not-
talking about it northern
Florida ones up around
Oh.
Jacksonville.
Yeah, St. John, or what is it? What is it? The St. John? Is it the St. John's?
Indian River
Mhm.
Lagoon, St. John's
St.
River.
John's River.
Yeah, I've heard that that's a decent resource. And the last thing I want to talk about is just the other fish that we have, this hybridized species, which is it's really an interesting fish. They're a dirty little fish. They are head digging, where you catch a 30, 40 pound striper. It doesn't think you can stop it. It just goes straight to the surface and just heads toward Guam, and then you just have to track it and slow it out of trees. These hybrids are bulldogs. They want to go straight down. And if you can imagine this, it's in essence a permit. It's just got a wide body, a bigger tail. It turns sideways in current and really will beat on you. And they just got a bad little attitude. They're a fun fish. Again, like I said, a big one's 24, 25 pounds, but it's a good fish. In fact, Ethan, if you would show a couple pictures, let's
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a good image of, well, let's go ahead and, if you can, go back to that electronics image. That's a 28, 29, 30 pound striper you're looking at right there. Summertime fish.
Wow.
That's a small fish eating a crease fly. That's probably a 40 pound striper. He's got shoulders. And my bald spot's bigger. That's early days of fly fishing for striped bass when none of us knew what the heck we were doing. But every now and then, blind dog would find. That's how thick these fish can get. That is probably 500 stripers in just under my boat, just within the sonar cone of my boat. And if I can put some glasses on to see how deep a water that image is shot in.
15 feet.
Those from 7 feet to 15 feet pressed all the way down to the bottom. You can see bait all superimposed with them. And that's what we look for. When we're on our electronics, if I see bait that is sitting underneath the fish, those fish have typically already fed and it's over. If I see those bait fish sitting on top of the fish, I'm going to hang out for at least 30 minutes because those fish have not fed and they're getting ready to. Might not do it within the amount of time my patience will allow me to sit on them and wait. But I'm much more inclined to stay on that school of fish that are under the bait than over the bait. Obviously, in this scenario where the fish and the bait are all superimposed together, it is game on. There is death and destruction going on underneath my boat right there, and it really wouldn't matter what you put down. As long as you moved it, they will eat it. That's an ideal scenario for you to do your straight dump drop with your fly and just start ripping it straight up off the bottom. It's an efficient way to do it, so you're not having to spend false casts to get a fly out. And I promise you, once you hook one, he's heading away. You're going to feel like you made a cast of that fish because he's getting you in your backing.
Is that a two-hand retrieve on that yo-yo?
It's not necessary. There are times when only a two-hand retrieve is going to catch a striper because they're only going to want that bait fleeing from them at Mach 5. There are other times when they want that bait moving slower. And again, it's like any other fish that any of us fish for. All of us that have done this for any amount of time know that presentation is the most important aspect of what we do. The fly that we throw is always going to be secondary. I saw that when I saw Lee Wolf catch a trout on a cigarette butt. I've seen it myself. Oh yeah. If you can move something the way it's supposed to move, whether it looks as much like it or not, oftentimes you will create a reaction strike in a fish. They are genetically predisposed to put it in their mouth. They may spit it out, but they are genetically predisposed to run it down and get it in their mouth before the guy next to him does. Because if he gets it in his mouth and it's food, I don't get it and he does. So many fish put things in their mouth they have no intention of eating. Or will they have the intention of eating, but they don't actually know if they're going to eat it. Lots of stuff gets spit out by lots of different species of fish. And then you got stuff like a barracuda. He knows exactly what he's eating. You don't ever see him go down and pick up a beer can off the bottom like a tiger shark will. But other species like a trout or a redfish or a snook or a tarpon will eat something that doesn't look natural. I mean, come on, the toadfly looks natural. What does the toadfly look like? It does not look like any crab I've ever seen and certainly doesn't look like a shrimp. But I have caught a buttload of tarpon on a toadfly. So if you move it right, you will get those reaction strikes. So we've discovered that same thing with these stripers. And there are times when we are having to put that rod under our arm and that two-handed just machine gun strip. A striped bass does love an erratic strip. They don't like that, kind of metronome cadence, tick, 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 tick. They want it real syncopated beat if you're a jazz guy for how you're going to move that fly in the water. And it's not an overly complicated fish. It is a complicated fish to pattern, but once you have them pattern and know where they are and when they like to eat, it's just a matter of getting a fly in front of them and moving it right. And that fly needs to be the right size, commensurate to what they're seeing in that environment. And with modern day electronics, I can tell whether I'm on a school of 2-inch bait or 5-inch bait or 10-inch bait. So we can tell what we're on and what those fish are eating. And if not, then I'm going to throw a cast net. I'm going to throw a cast net and pull up what they're eating so I can see what it is. Striped bass are very scent oriented. Must be very, very, very careful what gets on your fly. You can augment that by using scents that are designed to enhance a fly or a lure. Some of you guys may be so pure you're anti-scent on your flies. Cool. You don't want to fish next to me if you are anti-scent on your fly. I'll hurt your feelings.
Hey, Mitch.
Yes.
Can you or I interject the story about your dad fishing with the guy he didn't like, and he kept touching his hand and something and put it on the bait?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll share a story that started out with my father, a trick he taught me, and one that I used a whole lot more than he ever did after he taught me the trick. And this is a good lesson for anybody that hires a guide. Don't be a jerk. If you're a real jerk to like your kid, and this is how this one started. We had a father that was being somewhat abusive to his child in the boat. And dad, being a little league baseball coach his whole life, was just not going to have any of that. So every time the dad would put a bait on the dad's rod, he would take his little pinky and lightly touch a little spot of gasoline that had spilled out by the pool port. And he would tickle that little bait fish's belly with that gasoline. The little boy caught 17 stripers and dad caught 0. Dad would move over to the other side of the boat, and my father would gas that bait. And then the dad would move to the back corner of the boat. Dad would gas that bait. So you can use sense to your advantage or your buddy's disadvantage. It's really up to how you want to treat your friend. If it's a monetary gamble on who's going to catch the most fish tonight, break out the gasoline. Absolutely sabotage your. All right, well, that's kind of the rundown on this fish. Now, we have some other amazing fish here in Middle Tennessee. Most people don't realize that we have the world record smallmouth bass, the world record walleye, held the world record striper for years, the world record hybrid for a number of years. We've got a great resource here. We catch brown trout up to 20 plus pounds, rainbow trout up to 12, 14, 15 pounds. We've got a lot of great resources here in Middle Tennessee. We've got a long growing season. You guys have the longest growing season of all, but compared to, say, a Montana or a Wyoming, our fish get a lot more time to eat and grow. They're not spending as much time with that slower wintertime metabolism that really reduces their ability to grow in a year. So just like our stripers, our fish get huge. A striped bass can get 60 pounds in 12 years, 13 years, 14 years. That same fish in the ocean, a 60-pound striper in the ocean's 22 years old, 23, 24 years old. We don't know how big they can get. We know that we've caught them in freshwater over 70 pounds now, but how much over 70 will they get? We don't know. I suspect in the next 25 or 30 years, a freshwater striped bass will exceed the world record saltwater striped bass, but it's hard to say. It's probable. But again, they don't have the predators. They are living in places where they have longer growing seasons and just gentler environments. They're not having to fight the ocean. The ocean, as you guys know, is a brutal mistress on its children. So as you're dealing with red tides right now and you're churned up waters from hurricanes and just, big sugar screwing everything up down south, you guys are battling so much environmental distress on your waters that nobody knows better than you what that's all about. I admire all you guys that are plugging away at it and fighting the big corporations down there that are killing your resources. You know, Florida's magical. You know, you guys that live there may have lost some of the appreciation for this gift you have down there, but those of us that only get to go there to visit, only get to go there on vacation to enjoy what you guys have every day, it's such a precious resource. I hope all of you guys are fighting hard to keep it as pristine as you can. I know you are. And yeah, if I can do anything, I'm part of Captains for Clean Water. If I can ever do anything to help, I'll jump on a plane and come down. If you got a program going on, anything I can do. I love Florida. I spend most of my time over in the Chokoloskee area or down in the Keys, but Flamingo, Indian River, it's all water that I love, from St. George Island, chasing redfish over on Dog Island, to chasing Kobe off the beach. Your state is just an amazing place. So does anybody have any questions about striped bass that I can answer, or great big nasty nighttime trout fishing? Because that's my other jam.
Ooh.
You mentioned that in the Cooper Santee introduction of the striped basses, they did not expect any reproductive process to take place. Obviously, that has changed.
It has changed on the Santee, because the Santee originated as one of their natural spawning grounds. It had the sandy bottom that their egg needs to be able to gently roll across for 50 to 55 hours. Unfortunately, the other places, when I say Santee is man-made, but it dumps into the ocean, as unlike my lake, which dumps into a great big river that dumps into another river that dumps into another river before it finally gets to the Mississippi River and can get to the ocean. So there are some freshwater environments where these fish are capable of reproducing, including the Santee, but the numbers in the Santee are a fraction of what they were when it was not dammed up.
So
Good
Mitch,
question.
As a follow-up, when you have 10,000 fish under the boat, have they all been stocked?
Every single one of them.
Wow. And
Every single
they
one.
stock every year kind of thing?
They have to. Yes. The attrition rate on these fish are very high. They will eat them. Largemouth bass will eat them. Catfish will eat them. A big crappie can eat them. When they put them in, they're this big. If they put them in when they're that big, we can only afford a fraction of them. So we put them in that big. We know the attrition rate's going to be high, and we hope to have enough survival each year to make it past the being predators. I mean, being prey. Same with the hybrid. Both of them are, we get these stocks from two different places. We get fish stocks from both North Carolina, and there are some Western waters, over in Oklahoma and Arkansas, particularly Arkansas, do a lot of raising of these fish. Originally, it all started in Carolinas.
Are there trout in that lake?
Not in my lake. The trout waters that I guide are about 45 minutes east of me. My lake is in a warmer water part of Middle Tennessee. 45 minutes east of me, I start getting in hill country. The lake that feeds that stream that I'm trout fishing in is 200 feet deep versus 100. The water coming out of that tail race is year-round cold. It's a 25-mile long river that comes out of that dam before it hits a big river. And we have both trout and stripers in that river.
Right. And like north of LA, when they unload the trout out of the truck, it's like a feeding frenzy for the stripers in Lake Castaic, which is, I might have the world record, I don't know. And they learn to make these rubber lures, articulated lures that are rubber that exactly look like a rainbow trout, and they troll those around.
But that lure was not originated to be fished for striped bass.
A regular bass?
No,
Brown
a
trout.
bass. That lure was originally designed for Castaic Lake in California for those 15, 16, 18, 20 pound largemouth that were eaten out in that lake. Those guys figured out, hey, we can take this over to these other areas and striper fish with it, and it works just as well as it does for those great big 15-pound bass. Yeah. And they charge $36 a piece for that lure. They're very proud of it.
Wow.
A 15-pound largemouth is not likely to take the lure from you. A 30-pound striper is very likely to take your $36 lure from you.
I'm going to take a moment and show the book that Mitch's dad, Stu Tinney. I don't get. Is it backwards?
No,
good.
that's right.
Right.
It's right.
It's called Life's No Fun Until You Get Your Feet Wet. Some of you guys might want to get this. It's packed full of old time stories. It's just hysterical how he became, like, he was abused in the war as a corporal or something, and he got to be the guide to the generals or something, finding trout waters in other countries. So he's quite a conniver. And
you haven't heard the half of it. My father was smuggling rifles out of Germany on military aircraft into sporting goods stores in New York City while he was in the army, because he found these amazing German hunting weapons that he could buy for a fraction in the 50s, not long after World War II. He was buying these beautiful German hunting weapons, and he hooked up with some Air Force guys to get him over to, But yeah, dad was catching monster brown trout in Austria, and a general drove over the bridge with his driver and saw dad fighting a big fish, and immediately called dad out of the river, came up, asked him what was going on. Dad told him he was, on his day off trout fishing. The general kicked the guy that was driving his car out of the Jeep and said, "You're my new driver." Love to trout fish. So that was my dad's military experience.
the story in there about gas in the bait is in there too. It's hysterical. Some of these stories are unbelievable. Fishing way back in the middle of nowhere and coming across these hillbillies that had pointed shotguns at him because they thought he might be a revenue or looking for a still or stills or something. Really, really good book. I lent it to Ken. I have one copy here that I would lend out if somebody's interested.
Yeah, I agree with JT. It's a good read. So if you want to get a book to just sit down and enjoy and not be able to put it down, that's a book that you want to get.
Available on Amazon.
Yeah, maybe we could put one in the club library, Ken.
There you go. Yeah.
Happy to donate anything that you need me to donate, and Dad would be happy to sign any of your books.
Whoa, thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hey, Mitch, you mentioned earlier that you said with your girl wrists or whatever about a 10 weight outfit.
Yes.
Is that your go-to outfit, 10 weight? And my second question to piggyback off that is what's the lowest in terms of weighting of a rod that you can go? Can you catch those with a 7 weight? Can you have fun with an 8 weight with them? That type of thing.
Yeah. Again, we fish anything from a 5 weight to a 12 weight based on how we're fishing and where we're fishing. And here, let me explain. We got a lot of cover here. If I'm fishing, let me pull out a beast for you. I'm going up to the river where our 60-pound fish live, and I'm throwing a 15-inch skipjack fly.
Wow.
Against a log that's lying down in the river that has a 60-pound striper sitting underneath it. I've got to throw it. The only chance I've got at stopping that fish from going in timber is to literally tie him with a chain to a truck and pull him out. So I need a truck, and a 12 weight is a truck in fresh water. That said, if I'm fishing on, say, Boone up in East Tennessee, where I've got a lot of water around me and I don't have trees to deal with, and my water temperatures are not something that might risk the safety of the fish with an extensive fight, we can get away with lighter stuff. I'm going to get away with as light a stuff as I can throw and not hurt fish. These fish will kill themselves fighting you. And the warmer our water gets and the more depleted the oxygen gets as we get closer into our summer months, the quicker we want to get these fish to the boat and back in the water. So that will also dictate how heavy a gear we go in with, because we don't want to hurt.
Now,
Good
so when you have a client with you, you basically have all the gear from a 5 through 12 matched to the proper size.
I'm not
fly.
gonna I'm not gonna have a 5 through 12. I'm gonna have what we need for that, for what we're going to experience. I'm gonna know whether we are in that 7 to 9 weight range of fish and conditions and environment, or if I need beef, or if this can be a play day, because we're not going to catch anything but 5, 6, 7 pound fish, and we can go out with 5 weights and just rip our arms out of the socket with 5 weight rod. And it'll be a spot chasing fish blowing up for acres. So it really has to do with what we're going to be doing. As long as I'm on the water 5 days a week, I know historically what these fish are doing. These fish are so cyclical. This is the greatest fish to ever document if you're a fisherman that likes to keep records, and I am. I have documented every fishing trip I've ever been on. I've got a list of criteria that I key in, from everything from weather conditions to lunar phases to water conditions, everything, and all of my past history for 2 weeks prior to that trip. And I had a buddy write a software package that allows me to just download all this stuff, and I can spit out a document that shows me exactly where my fish ought to be, what they ought to be eating, what time they ought to be eating, because time of day is critical. This fish is so efficient at predation that their bite windows are really, really narrow. Back in the early days, I used to guide all full day trips. I have tried the last 25 years to discourage clients from doing full day trips. It is a waste of your money and my time. If you want to spend that kind of money, I'd rather see you book 2 half-day trips. If you're from out of town, then we'll do a split trip. We'll do 5 hours in the morning and 3 in the evening. It's more of a pain in the butt to me, but it gives you a much better opportunity to be in the better feeding windows of these fish. They prefer a low light environment, and you were just better off keying in on those times. And if I've got a client that is insistent on doing a full straight 8-hour trip, I'm going to be brutally honest that you're going to get a 4-hour fishing trip and a 4-hour boat ride. And if that's what you want, I'm happy to try, but I don't want the illusion that we're going to be catching fish all 8 hours. It's not going to happen. That's not what these fish do. So I like to be brutally honest with my clients. I don't want anybody to have any kind of shock from what they're going to experience from what I'm telling them they're going to experience on the front end. And fortunately, I've developed a tremendous clientele. I haven't been able to take a new client in about 5 years.
Really?
Yeah. But
so
the
if we
older I
want
get, some of us are dying off. So I might have some windows open up.
I was just gonna say, if some of us want to get together and get a trip up there, you don't really have open windows right now, huh?
This was not about me trying to recruit some customers. It was not. This was about me appreciating what you guys are all about. I'm a member of your group. I follow you. Jay got me interested in your organization. I like to do things. And when I was asked if I wanted to do a presentation, I was more than happy to contribute. If anybody down there is interested in striped bass, I'm more than happy to share. Doesn't mean I won't have a cancellation and can maybe squeeze somebody in. Cousin Jay, I'll cancel somebody for you, your family. Blood's thicker than cash, baby. So you're in the boat whenever you can come.
How many other guides are on that lake?
Oh,
And
God.
How many fly?
Who knows? This year, maybe 20 or 30. I don't know.
How many fly fish? That's it, huh?
You're looking at him.
What is the lake? What lake are you on, Mitch?
I'm on J. Percy Priest Lake in Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay.
And that's 40 miles across, is that what you said?
43 long.
Wow. You
Yeah,
burn up the gas.
long, skinny, real fingery lake. About 103 feet deep at its deepest. Yeah.
I think Len's online ordering your dad's book now, if I'm not mistaken. Or
Yeah.
Man, I
It's
just
time to book a trip, one.
got it. $3.98.
$3.98.
It's a bargain.
Yeah.
You can't print on paper for $3.98.
I'm sorry, but I added another $10 out of consideration to you.
Thank you. I'll split that in inheritance with my sister.
So what leader setup do you use on these rigs?
I am a light line guy.
Mhm.
I started off as a light line guy fishing conventionally. As a guide, I discovered that if I used 10-pound test over 12-pound test, live baiting, downlining live bait in my boat for these stripers that get up to about 40, 45 pounds in the lake I'm guiding, that if the guy sitting in the boat next to me on that same group of fish was using 12 and I'm using 10, we're using the same bait, putting them down the same exact spot, and we're both on the same group of fish, I'm going to hook 10 to every one of his.
Wow.
10 to every one.
Why?
That revelation changed the whole way I operated as a guide. I figured that if I could coach my clients in how to fight fish, that out of those 10, odds are we're going to land 7 or 8. Might break off 2. Might have one just absolutely school us and get us down in the trees. Might have one that's taken off so fast he actually backlashes a reel and blows it up. Odds are we're going to land at least 7 out of those. So the guy next to me using 12-pound test is going to probably land 90% of his on that 12. But even at 90%, he's only landing 1 fish to 7.
So they're that picky? So
Go ahead.
They're that picky or that?
Leader
They-
shy?
They can be that line shy. There are, when the water clarity is good and they're wary. Remember what I said, guys, this fish is only been in fresh water since 1941. It is a flighty fish. Really still think shark chasing. I had 3 ribs broken scuba diving under a guy's boat. I spent a lot of time underwater with these fish with a rebreather. So boats don't know I'm down there. It doesn't help me to learn how to catch striped bass if I'm out in open water where there are no boats. Those fish are not dealing with the stimuli that they're going to be dealing with when my boat is sitting on top of them. So the only way I can learn how these fish respond is to get under them or in them when other guys are fishing for them. So there are some inherent hazards in that. I occasionally get hooked by a fisherman and occasionally I get hit by a fish. On this day, a guy with a fiberglass deck boat, no carpet, dropped a coin. And I've heard enough coins that I know it was a quarter on the deck of his boat. And it blew a school of 30-pound stripers out so fast that I took a 30-pounder in my rib cage at 30 miles an hour and broke 3 ribs instantaneously.
Oh, wow.
22 feet under.
Wow.
Oh, that's happened twice. That's happened twice. I've had ribs broken from fish. Yeah.
Who was that guy smoking a pipe down there with the glasses on? Do you see him?
What was what?
There's a guy smoking a pipe down there.
Sounds like a Tinsky to me.
It's another fishing Tinsky.
Man,
I could write a book of stories about him too, but I can't.
I just didn't think there were any 3 of us that fished that you could get together in one room at the same time. I'm impressed.
Mhm.
I mean, our egos alone can't fit in one room. How are you going to get us in there?
Well, great job, Mitch. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that,
Yeah, we
guys. If
really-
there's everything I can do for your club, your group, man, I am always interested in helping. Would love to come down and fish with you guys. And if any of you guys ever want to come up to Nashville, just give me a heads up. I'll sneak a day away. I'll take a day off. You guys are part of Jay's team. That makes you crew to me. We'll find a way of getting you out on the water. That doesn't mean all of you.
This is only 25, and I think there's 125 or something.
Yeah, they're not here. Those
Yeah.
that aren't here weren't made that offer.
Yeah.
Got to be a bonus for showing up for the presentations.
Mitch,
And Mark just left. As soon as I made that offer, Mark left.
Mitch, I think you're right.
Ethan's on his way next week, probably.
Yeah.
I'm away.
Mitch, I think your idea of fishing mornings and evenings and then sandwich that in between with a trip to the strip over at Nashville makes a lot of sense to me.
You know, That's what a lot of people seem to think. Nashville is a fun town.
It is a fun
It
town.
really is Music City, USA. If you like music, this is a good town for you. Don't bring it. It's not child friendly anymore, though. Don't bring your children.
No.
It's become one large honky tonk.
Yeah.
Sadly, we kind of liked old Nashville. It had its own kind of charm. But the new Nashville is definitely a revenue generating machine, and it is all about tourist dollars, unfortunately. So, yeah, odds are you're going to want to do that for about 2 hours, and you're going to call me and say, hey, anyway, we can get back out on that water a little earlier, because I've seen about all of Nashville I want to see.
Yeah. Well, then you get a siesta between Nashville and your next
I'm doing
trip
my
on the
job
water.
right. You're not going to want to go to Nashville. You're going to want to go to your hotel room, lie down for 4 hours, crash, burn, hydrate, eat, and meet me back at the lake.
There you go. There you
All
go.
right. Well, guys, it was a real pleasure. If nobody has any other questions, I'm going to scoot on out of here.
All right. Well,
That's
thank
all.
you.
Thank you very much, Mitch.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure. Everybody have a great night.
Thank you. Well, Ethan, was it worth it?
That's a good one.
That was
For sure.
good.
Great.
Yeah.
So
So
he's a dynamo.
Just
Yeah,
thinking.
I was gonna
Wealth
say,
of
could have a little more enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Ken, I bought a copy of the book for the club.
And it
What's
was only-
that?
I bought a copy of the book for the club.
Ah,
For
So
$4?
very nice.
hardcover, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Wow.
JT, I
That's-
couldn't believe that was your cousin until he started talking about the orange carpet.
I
Then you knew it fit, huh?
would have probably said something like the orange carpet didn't match the drink.
That was a great presentation, really.
What was the name of the book again so I can write it down?
I'll show it. It's Stu Tinney, Tinney, STU, Stu. And it's Life's No Fun Until You Get Your Feet Wet. It looks like this.
Penny, okay.
I got
Life's no fun. Life's no
Hold it
fun.
up again, please. I can't read the
It says life's no fun until you get your feet wet.
life's no fun.
Until you get your feet wet.
Okay.
Yeah, Chubb, you would appreciate some of those stories. They're probably
Yeah.
from your era, you know.
Chubb,
But-
as soon as a copy comes in, I'll bring it to you. It'll be weeks before I get through this Churchill biography. It's yours. I'll bring it to you.
My daughter lives in Nashville and is misses Florida tremendously and is always fishing. As a matter of fact, I just came back from 2 weeks out on Little Gasparilla Island with her. And I'll have to tell her about this because she's of the belief that you can't catch any fish in Nashville. What was that lake? What was the name of that lake?
I remember.
it's Percy Priest. So the Percy Priest Dam, right below the dam, when it's generating, you can go out below the dam and catch the stripers. And that's right off the, I believe that's the Harding Road exit off I-40.
What was the name again? The dam?
The Percy Priest Dam.
Percy Creek.
Percy, what?
Percy Creek.
Percy Creek.
Percy Priest.
Priest.
Priest. Yeah.
Like
And
like
then-
this, that type of priest?
Yeah. Just like that priest. It's J.
Oh,
Percy
okay.
Priest, Percy Priest Reservoir up above it. So he's going around the
Right.
reservoir.
Ethan, if
And
you
also,
share my screen, I have it up on the screen. I could try to share the map.
Let's hear the Montana fishing report from my brother. Are you fishing yet or is it still snowing?
It's still snowing.
Aren't you lucky?
Not much, but it's still snowing. It's a little too cold for midgets yet.
My brother's
Ethan,
trout bum.
Ethan, go ahead, JT.
I said my brother is a trout bum. We both lived in Pennsylvania at one point. He was up in the what are those mountains called?
Poconos.
Poconos. And I was in Philly, and I still remember his first trout and on a sulfur, on a dry fly, and on the Lehigh River, which I'm sure Chubb knows. And the day I talked him into putting the spinning rod down and trying this fly fishing thing. And now he's a trout bum who just only fly fishes.
There you go. You did a good job.
He's a good
Hey,
brother.
Ethan, just want to thank you for sending a link to Ron Vaccaro, our newest
No
member, I
problem.
believe. Ron, how are you? I mentioned you yesterday. We'd be saying hi on the screen. So
Well, thank you. I really appreciate joining in tonight's meeting. Your speaker was outstanding.
yeah. That
He said a high bar.
we usually have pretty good people in that regard. So I think you're gonna enjoy your time spent with us. So welcome.
Who is
Well,
that?
I am a trout bum, so now I have to learn how to throw bigger flies.
I don't know if I've ever thrown anything as big as what he was
Yeah.
showing up
Oh,
there.
man.
15-inch flies. Holy God.
He's quite a talented tyer. I was looking at his crease fly and I'm like, damn, if I could ever tie something.
Yeah. You could see it. He has some great workmanship on those flies. Yeah.
Those flies are bigger than the lizardfish I catch.
So a casting technique called chuck a duck too.
Yeah.
Fucking
Yeah.
duck.
Len, maybe you could hire a train and put some lizardfish in barrels and spin them around to get them up to Tennessee. Screw up their goal.
Bring them to Tennessee. Oh, well.
All right, well, I'm
Eric,
gonna-
any luck with that map? No?
Oh, I didn't know if you wanted me to share it, but I can share it, yeah.
Go ahead, I opened it up for you.
Okay, let me just get it,
We're on speaker view.
yeah.
So Bill, another thing you can do when you're up there, go to Cumberland Transit and see Ronnie Howard,
Wow.
and he can point you in a good direction.
Wow.
Can you see it
That's
though?
Last
Cumberland
lake there, huh?
Transit?
That's
Look
a
how
huge,
close it is to the airport.
Cumberland Transit.
wow.
So it's
What is-
pretty
is
close
that
to
a shop?
Nashville.
Is that a,
Wonder how my
It's,
kayak grew in there.
Outdoor shop in downtown Nashville.
Okay.
Mhm.
Jay Person.
So, Eric,
So-
if you scroll up to the top, you'll see the dam right next to Interstate 40.
Yeah, you
And
can
you
see
can
it.
actually see
Yeah,
it right
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And you
Oh,
can just
okay.
fish the bank when they're generating, and those stripers just come down and maul the bait coming through the generator.
Oh,
well, that's,
The bait is probably chewed
I'm gonna
up.
have to go visit
Yeah.
more often.
He's like a
Yeah.
white flesh, right?
And that's
Like a
10
white-
minutes from downtown. It's just a white bait, basically.
Mhm.
But he was putting in the south end of the lake, I guess?
He's probably got a dock down here just to the south side of there on the west side of the lake.
Because he said
Okay.
it was 40 minutes or 30 miles to the north of the lake and
Yeah, he's in a marina, I know.
this
But
is
there's marinas
this is
all
the
over it.
address of his guide service is down here. This is the address of his
Yeah.
guide service.
Oh, right there?
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Ethan, did you ever fish that lake when you were up in the Tennessee area?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was actually on another lake up to the north. It was Old Hickory when I was in Hendersonville. And then I grew up over to the east, a lake called Center Hill.
Okay.
And that's where he's talking about the trout fishery. They stock the Caney Fork River just below the dam every 2 or 3 times a year.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Ethan, how far is that from downtown Nashville? That's where she
That
lives.
spot right there, that dam is 10 minutes from downtown.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
You see, it's right next to the airport. It's not far out of town at all.
Sounds like it could be a road trip.
Could be a
I mean-
fly.
How long of a ride would that be?
It's 16 hours, I think. Is there no,
16th, great.
I can
No,
get there in about 12.
12, yeah. 12.
10 hours, it says
I'm going with him.
11 hours, it says
That's low flying.
there you go.
But there is
the tough part
there
of
is
it.
direct flights out of Sarasota Airport.
Yep.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
International?
1 hour and 55 minutes, and it's $225 right now.
See
Round
now,
trip, I assume.
There is. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah, right here. on the-
if you look to the right, you see Asheville and Mike Tanner's over in those mountains somewhere.
So, anything else you guys want to look at on the map?
No, I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna take off, fellas. We'll see you out there.
Dokey.
Thank you.
See you on the water.
Just one quick thing, if anybody needs anything in regards to membership, please reach out to me. I'm new to this membership. I think I'm just getting my feet wet, but. If
Did you get
anybody-
that list today?
Yeah, and Bob had given me access, so and I met with the expertise today to learn a little more, Len and
Good.
You met with John or with Bob?
John and Len today.
Oh, okay. Oh, Len, thanks, bud. All right, get you up to speed, huh?
Yeah,
Eric, I
working
have
on
a
it.
question. Is there a membership form or, you know, is there anything I have to do to commence my membership in the club?
Send us a
I'm
check.
sure there is. I'm sure somebody wants a check and
Yes,
form.
Yeah, as I mentioned to you yesterday, we cut it down from 30 to 20. Eric, did you get the email for Ron from Ethan?
No, I did not. I don't think so.
Okay.
I can forward that to
But I'll get it
I can
and
forward
send the membership form over.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mark.
And we can also, you can also,
Yeah,
we have the membership form on the website too.
On the website, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
I know Bob was sending out some membership forms online to people before Eric, before you took over the position. So I don't, again, you know me, I'm not into technology at all. So
No, I'm working on getting all the forms and John was gonna get me up to speed too, so.
Justin, do you have a question, Justin?
Yeah, I actually tried finding the membership form as well on the website, and I can't actually find it.
Okay.
So I kind of messaged the Facebook group, I don't know, maybe 2-3 months ago, because I kind of wanted to join you guys, you know. So I finally got back into fly fishing down here in saltwater. So ran into a couple members randomly when I was just out on the water and stuff. And so I'm Justin. Oh, well.
hey, Justin, how are
But yeah, definitely willing to, you know, mail my check somewhere too. You just got to tell me where to go.
I just sent, Justin, I just sent you my email address in the chat, so.
Awesome.
And then I'll, yeah, I'm first week on the job, so I'll.
Beautiful. You're good.
We
I
gotta-
just copied
we gotta
that, Eric,
cut
and
you
I'll
some
email you
slack,
later.
Eric,
So
right?
Our website is not the most efficient.
User friendly.
Find
it's
any-
all good. Hey, I love the maps on the website. That helped me out so much. So just finding locations, you know.
Yeah, and then you start getting a newsletter that I do when you I'm a member. We're gonna do a series on different areas to fish.
Okay.
By the local people with local knowledge. I think the first one's gonna be freshwater Lake Manatee. We had a hexagenia hatch last year. That was insane. Around so that was fun.
Ron, I just sent you on the chat my email address too, so you can, if you see it there, then if you want to send me an
great.
email, I can get you the stuff.
Thank you, Eric.
All right, people, I'm out. Peace out.
Right.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
How we doing,
Thank you,
JT?
guys.
Thanks, Jay.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you guys.
Yeah. All righty. Signing off, Ethan.
Whenever
Good.
y'all are ready.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, thank you.
See y'all guys.
Thank you guys.